Hi everyone, my name is Giovanna Proença and today we're going to talk about CodingBat Warmup-2. So if you want to get my solution to CodingBat, check the description below, and also if you want to get an ebook on how to become a developer as fast as possible, check on the description below, okay? So this is the page of CodingBat. I'm going to do the problems in the CS50 IDE so we can see the Debug 50, okay, and understand better what's happening in our code. And then I'm going to check the results in the CodingBat, okay, just for us to check if the results are okay. So I already passed the problems to the CS50 IDE, so we're going to read in here, okay? So the first problem is, given a string and a non-negative int n, return a larger string that is n copies of the original string. So if we see here the example, what is happening? So the two inputs of our function is what? Is the string, okay, and a non-negative int. So this integer that is being passing in the function, it's going to do what? It's going to be the n times that we're going to do a copy of this string. So what's the idea? So here we have 2, right? And here we have high as the string. So the output is high. So we're going to do 2 copies of high in here. And in the second case we see 3, so here we have 3 copies of high, okay? So let's start the problem. So remember, we have to define the function, so def string times. The CodingBat already give this to us, okay, so I'm just going to use the same notation. And what's the first thing that we have to do? We have to, so as we can see here, the output is a string, right? So the first thing we're going to do is to create a string, an empty string, to store the values of the result that we want to have, okay? So I'm going to call the string as result, okay? And we're going to initialize this variable as empty because we don't know what we're going to do to our result by now. And then, so in order to have these n copies of the original string, we're going to use the for loop, okay? So we're going to use for I in range, okay? So let's just see here the documentation of range Python 3 schools, just to make things clear. Every time you have a doubt, check on the 3 schools documentation because they have really good explanation and examples, okay? So the idea here, for example, it's what? The syntax is this, start, stop, and step, but the only required input that we have to give to the range function is the step, okay, as we can see here. The start and step are optional and the stop is required. Why is optional start and step? Because the default case is to start is 0 and the step is 1, okay? So we're going to put here the stop part of our range, and when we want to stop the for loop, we want to stop when we reaches the n copies of the original string. So we're going to use here n, okay? And what we're going to do inside, we want to return the original string n times, okay? So what we're going to put inside the for loop is this. So we want the result plus the str, that it's our string, okay? This is one notation, and we can use a simpler notation. We can simplify this using this, okay? Plus equals, that it's the same thing as equals result plus str, okay? So we're going to use plus equals here, right? And after doing the whole for loop, what we want to get, the result, the output of our function, right? So we're going to put here return result, okay? And now I'm going to call our function outside. So here everything that is inside this function, so have this indentation here is that this means that this is inside the function, and here we are outside the function, and we're going to call just to check if the one example is working. Okay, so let's do this. Python problem1.py. So we run it. Okay, and now we're going to use the debug 50 problem1.py. I'm going to put the breakpoint in the for loop, and let's check what's happening. Okay, so let's see. So we have n equals 2, right, because we pass here as 2, result empty because we initialize here result as empty, and the str as high because we pass as input high here. Okay, so let's see. So in the first iteration, I is equals 0, right? And what's going to be returned, or the result? It's going to be high. Why? Because we are adding high to the result that before was empty, okay? Now in the second iteration, so now I is equals to 1, and what's going to be returned? The result, sorry, it's going to be high, because we're getting the previous value of result that was high, and we are adding the str, that is our original string, and now we have high. Then we're going to do for loop again, but since if we put one more in I, so for example, if I equals 2, it's going to be the same number as n here, and this stops our for loop. Why? Because if we see here, the stop in range, it's not included. So the number that we put in the range, it's not included. Okay, that's why we stop in I equals 1. And then we get the result here, and we're going to copy and paste. Why is not printing? Because I should have put this inside a print. Okay, in the next one we're going to do this. So I'm going to paste in here to check if everything's working okay. I'm just gonna put the same indentation, go, and all correct. Okay, let's go to the next one. So now let's do problem 2. Given a string and a non-negative int n, we'll say that the front of the string is the first 3 chars, or whatever is there if the string is less than length 3. Return n copies of the front. So let's check an example to understand what the problem is talking about. So we see here that the function have 2 inputs, right? So we receive an input as a string, here it's chocolate, and the second input, it's a non-negative int n. So what we're going to do, we're going to get the first 3 chars of the string. So in this case, we're going to get cho, right? And we're going to do n copies of these first 3 chars. So here the input is number 2, so we're doing here twice, right? And we have this other case here when the string is less than length 3. So for example, if we had here AB, we would return how many chars we have in this string that is less than length 3. For example, here, if our string is AB, we would return AB, AB, AB. Or if our string is just A, we would return A 3 times, right? So let's do the problem. So first of all, remember, since our output is a string, so we're going to start initializing a string here. So we're going to initialize our string as an empty string called result, okay? And now we're going to work with this problem of seeing if the length of the string is less than 3 or is greater than 3, okay? So first of all, we're going to check this, we're going to do an if and else to check these 2 conditions, okay? So if length of str is less than 3, we're going to create a variable to set how many chars we're going to grab from the string. So if the length of the string is less than 3, we're going to grab all the chars we have inside the strings, like we did in this case here, when we have A or AB, okay? So we're going to create a variable called length front, okay? And we're going to store in this variable the value of the length of the str. Okay, so this is the first case, when the string is less than length 3. So the length of the front is going to be how many chars we have inside the string. And the else condition is for these other cases here, when the string has length greater than 3. So for example, chocolate. Since we want to grab just the first 3 chars, we're gonna set the length front with the value of 3. Okay, because we just want to grab the first 3 chars of the string. Now, what we're going to do? Now we're going to grab these chars of the string, okay? And to do this, we're going to use the slice strings. So remember, as we saw before, remember here, when we are using the slice string, we're going to use this notation here, okay? And we're gonna grab the chars that are in these positions, but remember the stop position is not included. So we can see here in a string called hello world, we're grabbing just LLO. Okay, so we're grabbing the letters in position 2, 3, and 4. The position 5, that it's the comma, it's not appearing here. Why? Because it's not included. Okay, that's why we're just grabbing positions 2, 3, and 4. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to grab just the chars on the string in the position 0, 1, and 2, because we want to grab the first three chars, or whatever there is when the string is less than 3. Since we initialize this variable here, we're going to use it to set the end part of the slice string, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So front will be the name of the string with these chars that we're gonna grab, and we're going to put str. So see here the notation, okay? We have to use this, the name of the string, and this is square brackets here this is the notation for slice string, okay? I know it seems a little bit confusing, but check on the Debug school documentation, because it's really good and you will understand better what it's slicing strings, okay? And it's a powerful tool when we are using strings, so check this later. So as we can see here, we have to set the first position and where we want to stop the string slice, right? So we're going to put here 0 because we want to grab the first 3 chars, and we're going to set the last position with the length front that we created. We can use 0 or we can leave this empty, because the compiler will understand with this notation here that we're grabbing since the beginning of the string, okay? It's up to you to use 0 or just empty empty colon and the length front, okay? But it's always better to simplify things, so this is the best notation, okay? And now, to return the n copies, what we're going to use the for I in range. And remember, when we're using range, we have to use the stop because it's the required, okay? And we're going to specify a number at which position to stop the for loop, and it's not included, remember this. So since we want to do n copies, we're gonna use in the range n, okay? So for I in range n here, and now what we're gonna do, we're gonna add this this array here in the result string, this string here, sorry, in the result string, because we wanna have this result here, right? We wanna have n copies of the front, so that's what we're going to do. So result plus equals front, okay? And this is going to give to us what the problem wants. And after doing all of this, we're gonna do return result, okay? So now, just to check if the problem is running okay, we're going to see in here. So front times, and let's put a breakpoint and check in the debug 50. So debug 50 problem2.py. Let's check while this is running. So okay, we see here that the inputs is n equals 2 and the string is chocolate. Okay, now we're gonna set result as empty, and now we're gonna check the condition. So now we're gonna see if this condition is satisfied, the length front is going to be the length of the string, and the else condition is going to set as 3. Okay, so since chocolate has length greater than 3, we're going to the else condition is going to be satisfied, and we're gonna store 3 in as the value of length front. Okay, so length front variable has value 3, as we can see here. Now we're going to do the slice strings. Okay, so we're gonna grab the first 3 chars of our string, and we're going to see here. So the front string now has the first 3 chars of our original string, and now we're going to do the for loop. So let's see. The first iteration I is equals 0, and result by now it's empty, but when we iterate, now we have show. Okay, because we're adding the front in result, and now we have this. So now we're going to do again the iteration I equals 1, so result by now it's show, and we're gonna add show again because it's the front, so we have show. Okay, now we're gonna iterate again, but if we have I equals 2, it's going to be out of range. Okay, because our range here ends is 2, and remember, since this is not included, so we stop the iteration and we're going to return the result. Okay, and we have here show. So now I'm going to copy and paste there just to make things clear. You're going to understand, just to check if we have all the results correct, right? So go. We had some problems here with compiling. Why? Oh, because when I paste it, it takes all my indentation, so it makes things mistake here. But the code is right. It was just a problem when we are pasting in here. So all correct, right? Let's go to the next one. Let me check if I'm recording, because this already happened to me. I was recording a video, and when I saw, I haven't recorded anything. So let's see the third problem. Given a string, return a new string made of every other chair starting with the first. So hello yields HLO. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a for loop, right? And we're going to grab every other chair in our string, starting with the first one. Okay, we can see here. So let's start. Def string bits. This is already defined in our CodingBat part. Okay, and we can see that the input is just a string, right? So since the output is a string, we want to start our function initializing a variable that it's going to store the result of our function. So we have here result equals empty, right? Because by now we have nothing. We're not doing anything with this result. And now we're going to do the iteration. So as I said, we're going to do for I in range, we're going to do a for loop. But now we're going to use the range, the whole syntax. Okay, why? Because we want to grab every other chair of the string. So we want to grab this, this, and this. We don't want to grab each part of our for loop. So we're going to work with this step part, because the default is 1, but our step now it's going to be 2, right? So since we're going to use step, we have to initialize all the parameters. So we're So the problem says to us that he wants us to start with the first char, so the start is 0. The stop is what? Is the length of the str, because we want to do the for loop in the whole string, right? And what's the step? Is 2, because we want to grab every other char, okay? And what we're going to do inside, we're going to add in the result variable the element that is in the position of I, okay? And then we're going to return the result. So what is this? This is a notation to grab one element on the string. So for example, if I is 0, we're going to grab the element in position 0 of the string, okay? That is in this case H, for example. So this is what we're doing. So let's do debug 50 problem 3. First, I always forgot, we have to check if our code is working. So I'm going to do a print to this example here that CodingBat gives to us, okay? So let's do a debug. Oh, I forgot to use a breakpoint, sorry. So let's do a debug 50 problem 3 to understand what's happening. So we can see here that we're passing hello, okay, to the function, and here we initialize result as empty, and we're going to start our for loop. So in the first iteration, I is equals 1, so the previous value of result is empty, and we're going to grab the first letter in our string, the first char in our string, because this is str0, right? So what's going to be result? Just H. Now the next iteration, I is equals 2, not 1. Why? Because we're using here step 2, okay? So now I is equals 2, and we're going to, in this line here, we're going to grab the previous value of result, that is H, and we're going to add the new char here, that is in the position 2. So here we have HL. Now we're going to do the iteration again, I equals 4, and we're going to get again the string in the position 4, okay? And here we have HLO. Now we're going to do the iteration again, but since I equals 6, it's out of range, it's going to stop our for loop and it's going to return HLO, okay? So let's check on the CodingBat. So copy and paste. I'm just going to make the indentation right, because as I said, I don't know why it pasted it wrong, and all correct, okay? So let's go to the next one. So let's see problem 4. Given a non-empty string like code, return a string like C, CO, COD, COD. So we're seeing here that we're increasing one letter in each iteration that we're doing. So for example, in the first iteration we're grabbing C, on the second CO, on the third COD, and on the fourth code, right? And then we are adding all the iterations in one variable. So since this is the idea and the output is a variable, so let's start what? Let's start creating this empty variable that is going to be our result, okay? So result equals empty, right? And now, as I said before, we're going to do an iteration, because we see that in each iteration we are adding one more letter to the previous letter that we have, and we are adding this thing to the string. So we're going to use for I in range, right? And we're going to use a powerful tool of strings, that is slice string, okay? So let's see here, for example, code. If I put here 4 in the position, we're using this example here. Get the characters from start to position 4 in our case. So we're grabbing from the start to the position 4. So remember, we always count things starting by 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, right? why we're using 4? Because we have to remember that it's not included the position that we're grabbing. So we put here 4, but we're grabbing up to position 3. Okay, so when we use this string slice, we're grabbing the whole code. But what we're going to do is to grab, for example, the first iteration, we're just grabbing the first letter that is in position 0. And in the second, we're going to increment a variable, and then we're going to grab CO. The next iteration, we're going to grab up to the position 3, but actually it's up to position 2, remember, because it's not included, COD, and then we're going to grab everything, okay? And we're going to grab code. This is what we're going to do in our iteration. So we have to start, since we see here the first iteration, to grab the first letter, we are using here number 1, not number 0. Why? Because 0 it's the position, but when we are using slicing strings, the position where we want to reach, it's not included. That's why we're going to use 1, okay? So we're going to start our for loop in 1, and we're gonna go up to the whole string, okay? But since we want to iterate up to the whole string, we're gonna use +1, okay? Because if, for example, if we use here code, so we see here that code has length 4, okay? So we need the number 4 to do this, to grab the whole letter. And in range, remember that in range the stop input, it's not included as well. That's why we're here adding one more number, okay? In order to do the for loop in the whole string. So what we're going to do inside, we're going to grab result, and in result we're going to store this string slice. So in each iteration we're going to add this string slice to result, and in the end we're gonna have what we want, okay? So here is going to be str. So remember, since we're grabbing since the beginning of the string, here it's empty, okay? Or you can put 0, but it's better to use empty for notation. And we're going to grab which letters. So we see here that we are always incrementing 1 to the number in the last position. So if we use 1 here, what we're gonna grab? C, right? If we use 2 here, we're gonna grab CO. So our I will be the variable that it's going to control where we're going to, which letters we're going to grab, okay? And after the whole iteration, we're going to return result. So let's check, print. I'm going to test this problem here. Let's save. Let me put cd CodingBat Warmup-2 debug 50 problem 4.py. Oops, I forgot to use to put a breakpoint, and now let's check. So things are getting more understandable, okay? So we're having as input the str code, okay? And now we're going to create the variable result, that is an empty string here, and now we're going to do the for loop. So the first iteration, I is equals 1, okay? So here we're going to store what in result? We're going to grab the letters that are in the position 0 up to 1. But since 1 is not included, we're going to grab just the position 0. Okay, so result now it's just C. Next iteration, I equals 2. We're gonna grab here the letters in position 0 up to 2. But since 2 is not included, we're going to grab the letters in position 0 and 1. So here we're gonna have what? C, CO, right? Next iteration, I equals 3. We're gonna grab the letters in the position 0 up to 3, but since 3 is not included, we're gonna grab position 0, 1, 2. So here what we're gonna have, CCO, it's equals to CCO, COD. We're grabbing the 3 first chars, okay? Now in the next iteration, I equals 4. here we have result as C, CO, COD, and we're gonna add these string slice here that are the chars from the position 0 up to 4. But since 4 is not included, we're gonna grab the chars in the position 0, 1, 2, 3. Or, aka, we're grabbing the whole string, okay? So here we have our output. And now we're gonna do a next iteration. So if we have another iteration, I would be equals 5, but 5 is our range because the length of the string is 4 plus 1, 5. And then we're going to return the result, okay? So so let's check here. I would say something, but never mind. Let's check here. So sorry. I'm gonna paste in the CodingBat and we're gonna check if everything runs okay. And yes, all correct. Problem 5. Given a string, return the count of the number of times that a substring length 2 appears in this string, and also as the last 2 chars of the string. So high xxx high yields 1. We won't count the end substring. So what's the idea? We're going to grab the last 2 chars of the string, and we're going to compare with the others chars of the string and see if this sequence appears in here. So for example, this. So high, that is the last 2 chars, we're going to check if this high sequence here appears in the rest of the string. And we can see that this appears. Why? Because this first sequence here, it's high, so we're going to count 1. Okay? So let's start. So def, last 2, str. It's last 2, right? str. So the first thing that we have to do is what? We have to check if our string has length greater than 2. Because if the string has length less than 2, it's meaningful for us. There's no reason why we're going to compare the last 2 chars if the string just has 2 chars or less than this, okay? So we're going to do an if condition, length str. If length of str is less than 2, we're going to return 0 because there's no way of doing this comparison here, okay? And now, since we're going to have as output a number, we're going to create a variable count, and we're going to use count as name because it's very easy to understand, because we're counting how many times these 2 last chars appears in the string, okay? And then we're going to use the slice string again, but now to grab, it's not in here, but now to grab the last 2 chars of our string, okay? So it's basically what we did in the previous problem. In here, I think problem 3, no, problem 2. So it's the same idea as we did in here, but instead of getting the start of the string, we're going to grab the end of the string, okay? So I'm going to create a string called last 2, okay? So let's choose str, for example, and using string slice, I'm going to grab what? I want to grab the last 2 chars of the string. And how am I going to do this? Because each problem can have different sizes, right? Different length of string. So instead of putting a number here, we're going to use the length of the string. So length str minus 2. And here we're going to put anything because this is the default case, or we can use length str because the problem will understand that we're grabbing the last 2 digits, okay? but in this case I'm going to put this empty because it's always good for us to do the simple way. Okay, so in last two str we're grabbing the last two chairs, and this is what we're going to use to compare with the other substring. Okay, so now we're going to do for I in range, and what's going to be the range. So we don't want to do the for loop in the whole string. We just want to grab the strings up to the last two chairs. So we just going to grab this part. We don't need to grab the last two chairs. And how are we going to do this? Using the same notation here. So length str minus 2. Okay. And what we're going to do? So in each iteration, we're going to create a variable called, for example, compare. And in this variable called compare, we're going to store the value of two strings. And how we do this? So in here we're grabbing two chairs. So we're grabbing the chair in position I and the chair in position I plus 1. I just put here I plus 2 because remember, when we are limiting something like this top part of everything, it's always not included. Remember this. It's another convention for programming, okay? So we create this compare string, and we're going to do an if condition. So if compare is equals to last two str, what's going to happen? We're going to increment our count to 1. And after all of this, we're going to return count. I know this doesn't seem so easy to understand, but the debug 50 is going to help. So I'm going to put here this example so we can check what's happening. Okay, save it. And now debug 50, problem 5. I highly recommend you to do the same as I'm doing, okay? The debug 50, it's a tool that it's very powerful when you're programming. So try to get this by now because it's going to help you while the problems get harder, okay? So here we have the str that we're passing, hi xx hi, okay? And we're going to start. So you see that the compiler jumped this part. Why? Because this if condition here, it's not satisfied since hi xx hi has length greater than 2. Okay, so we're starting initializing our variable as 0, count 0. Okay, and we're going to start our for loop. So I equals 0. What do we have? We're going to create our compare. So this compare, we're grabbing the first two chairs, not the first two chairs, we're grabbing two chairs, that in this case the chair that is in the position 1 up to the position 2. But remember, this is not included, so it's going to grab the chairs from the position 1 and 0 and 1. Okay, so we're going to see here, we're going to grab hi, these two chairs here, and we're doing an if. So hi is equals to hi, yes, so we're going to count 1. Okay, so this if condition here is satisfied. That's why we're incrementing count to 1, because compare is high and last two str it's high also. That's why this condition is satisfied. So now we're going to do the next iteration. So I equals 1. We're going to create a new compare here. So we're grabbing the elements in the position 1 and 2. And now our compare has value ix. So we're grabbing these two letters here, okay? So it's going to check ix is equals to high. No, that's why we jump this if condition here, because this is not satisfied and our count keeps being 1, okay? Now we're going to do the next iteration, 2. So compare, we're going to grab the letters in position 2 and 3, and we have xx, as we can see here. So xx is equals to high. No, that's why this if it's not satisfied, our count keeps being 1, and we're going to the next iteration. So I equals 3. Compare is going to grab what? the chars in the position 3 and 4. So we have here xh. So xh is equals to high? No. So we're going to jump this if condition here, and our count remains 1. And we're going to do the for loop again, but since if I is equals to 4, it's going to be the same number that we have in here. That's why we stop the iteration and we return count. Okay, let's put this in here just to make sure that we did everything good. I'm just doing the right indentation because I don't know why this doesn't work, and all correct. Okay, let's go to the next one. So 6, given an array of ints, return the number of 9s in the array. So what we're going to do, we're going to grab this array here. So remember, array has the same idea as a string. Okay, so we're going to compare each element of this array here and check if the elements have number 9. If it is, we're going to return how many times 9 appears. Okay, so let's start our problem. So we're defining the function array count 9 nums. Okay, and since the output is a number, we're going to start defining a number here. So we're creating here variable count and storing the value of 0. Okay, and now we're going to do a for loop for I in range. Why we're doing a for loop? Because we want to check each element of the array. Since we want to check each element of the array, what's the length? What's the stop condition here in the range? Is the length of nums. Okay, because we want to check all elements in the array, so we're going to check the we're going to grab the number of the length of the array. Okay, so we're going to do basically what we did in problem 5. We want to compare if the element that we're seeing is equals to 9. So if nums I is equals to 9, we're going to increment our variable count to 1. And after all, we're going to return count. Okay, so I'm going to put here print just to check if our problem is running. Okay, save it, and now debug 50 problem 6. Oh, I forgot to use the breakpoint again, so sorry. So debug 50 problem 6. Let's see. So we can see here we are passing this array here 1 to 9, and we're going to start. So the first line of the function, we set count equals 0, and we're going to do the for loop. So the first iteration I equals 0, we're going to do so the first element of the array, we're going to grab this number. So we're grabbing 1 here, and we're going to compare if 1 is equals to 9. 1 is equals to 9? No. So this if is not satisfied, and we're going to do the next iteration. That's why count keeps being 9. Now I equals 1. We're going to grab nums I 1. So we're going to grab the element on position 1 in the array. And what's the position 1? It's this number 2 here. And so when we're going to see 2 is equals to 9, no. So this if it's not satisfied, and we're going to the next iteration. That's why count remains 0. And now we're going to do the next iteration, I equals 2. So here we're grabbing the element on position 2. And what is this element? This number 9 here. And 9 is equals to 9. Yes, so this if is satisfied, and that's why we're going to count 1 here. Now we're going to do the for loop again. But since we already iterate through all the elements of our array, we're going to stop the iteration, and it's going to return how many times number 9 appear. Okay, so let's just check if everything is okay in our problem. Let me fix the indentation and let's see. So all correct, perfect. Let's go to the next one, and the next one seems very similar. So given an array of ints, return true if one of the first 4 elements in the array is 9. The array length may be less than 4. So, what is the problem here? We're going to check just the first 4 elements of the array, and we're going to check if one of these first 4 elements is equals to 9, okay? So what we're going to do? Remember, as we have slice strings, we have also a slice array, okay? So that's what we're going to use in the problem. You can check later the documentation, okay? But it's exactly the same as slice string. So let's define here the function def array front 9 nums, okay? CodingBat already gave this to us, and we have here. So what's the first thing we're gonna do in this problem? We're gonna create an array with the first 4 elements of the original array that we have. So we're going to do first the array slice, okay? So let's create first 4 first 4 array. So we're going to create an array that we're gonna grab the first 4 elements of the array, but remember, we're grabbing the position 0, 1, 2, 3, right? So it's not 3 here, it's 4 because this number here it's not included, and we don't need to use 0 because the compiler understands that we're grabbing since the beginning, okay? Remember the not included part, it's always something that we forget. So now we're going to do an iteration, so for I in range, and we're going to do an iteration where in the first 4 elements of the array, since we already defined the first 4 elements, we're going to use the length of the first 4 elements. We're just going to work with this array now, this new array, okay? And what we're going to do, we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to compare each element of the array with 9 and check if they are the same. If the element of the array has value 9, if it is, return true. If not, return false, okay? So if first for I, because we're grabbing the element of the array, is equals to 9, return true. And in the end, we're going to return false. Why? Because when we return true, it doesn't matter if we have more iterations to do. It's going to break the code and it's going to return true. If any time of this for loop we return true, so we're going to go outside the for loop and it's going to return false. So let's check the problem. I'm going to put here a print to check, okay? And I'm going to grab the first example that they give to us. So I'm going to put a breakpoint in first 4, and let's do debug 50 problem 7. Let's check. So we have here the array that we're passing, and we can see here the first 4, what's grabbing? The first 4 elements, because we're grabbing since the position 0 up to position 3, because remember the number 4 here, it's not included, so it's going to grab up to position 3. That's why we just grab this first 4 elements here, okay? So now we're going to do a for loop, I equals 0, so we're going to check. So first for array, we're going to grab the position 0. What's the number in the position 0? It's number 1. 1 is equals to 9? No. So it's not this. if condition is not going to be satisfied, and we're going to do the for loop again. So now we have I equals 1. Here we're gonna grab the element on position 1 in this array, and what's the value of the element in position 1? It's 2. So 2 is not equals to 9, so this if condition here it's not satisfied. We're going to do the iteration again. Now I equals 2. Here we're gonna grab the element in position 2, and the element in the position 2 has value 9. So 9 is equals to 9? Yes, so we're going to return true. And you're gonna see that since we return true, we stop the code, and that's it. If you see, we have another iteration in here because we didn't stop the iteration. We didn't reach the limit of the range. But why we stopped? Because when we return true, this happens. This stopped the problem. Okay, stop coding. So let's check. I recommend you to check the documentation about true or false because this is a powerful tool to use, okay? And I think you should check this later. So we have all correct. Let's go to problem 8. We're almost finishing. So given an array of ints, return true if the sequence of number 1, 2, 3 appears in the array somewhere. So it's basically the same idea, but instead of just checking if appears just the element with value 9, we're going to check if the sequence of numbers 1, 2, 3 appears in the array somewhere. It's like we were doing when comparing strings, okay? But now we're comparing array. And remember, array and string are very similar. So let's define our function. So def array 1, 2, 3 nums. So we're passing as input the array here, okay? And let's start our code creating this model here. That is the sequence of number that the problem wants us to compare. So we're going to put here model, and we're going to define this as a string because we want to check if this substring appears in the string here, okay? Now we're gonna do an iteration for I in range, and we want to do an iteration in the whole array here. So what we're going to use? Length of the array. Okay? And now we're gonna do this if condition. We're going to check if this sequence here appears inside the array. So what we're going to do? So if nums, and remember we're going to use a slice array here. If nums I plus 3, why I plus 3? Because we're going to compare 3 positions. So we're going to compare I plus 1, and I plus 2. We put here I plus 3, why? Because this thing here, it's not included. So we have to put one more number than the one that we're actually wanting to compare. And we're going to compare this substring with the sequence. If this condition is satisfied, we're going to return true, and in the end we're going to return false. Okay, so let's do here print. I'm going to grab this here to check in the debug 50, and I'm going to put a breakpoint in line 10. So save it here, and let's put debug 50 problem8.py, and let's check. So we're passing as variable as input here this array, okay, and we are defining in this first line of the code the model that we want to check. So 1, 2, 3. This is the sequence of numbers that the problem wants us to check. So now we're going to do the first iteration. So I equals 0. And what is going to happen? So we're going to grab here nums I. So we're going to grab the numbers, the elements in position 0, 1, and 2. Okay, and we're going to compare with model. So actually, let me do in a different way, and I think it's going to be easier to understand. So check. I'm going to create a variable here because we're going to see in each iteration what's happening, okay? So let me do this again. Debug 50 problem 8. It's just to make things clear, okay? So let's see. We already defined model and we start the for loop. So for I equals 0, okay, the first iteration, we're going to have check as what? We're going to grab the elements in position 0, 1, and 2, and that's why we have this here. So 1, 1, 2 is equals to 1, 2, 3. No, so this if condition is not satisfied, and we're going to the next iteration. I equals 1. So we're going to have here check, it's going to grab the elements on position 1, 2, 3. So 1, 2, 3 positions. So we have this as the array. So 1, 2, 3, it's equals to the model. Yes. So this if condition here is satisfied, and it's going to return true. And we stop the code, okay? I think this way it's easier to understand what's happening. If you have any doubts, you can talk to us, okay? And we can try to explain in a different way to make things easier. Don't hesitate to talk to us, okay? And let's go to the last problem. So given two strings, A and B, return the number of the position where they contain the same length to string. So XXCAAZZ and XXBAAZ yields 3, since the XXAA and AZ substrings appear in the same place in both strings. So what's the problem here? We're going to compare two strings and check if some sequences appears in the same place in the both strings here. So as we can see, XXAA and AZ appears in the same position in these two strings here, okay? So let's start the problem. So def string match A and B. So A and B are our strings. And so the first thing we have to do, we can see here that we have as output a number. So we're going to initialize our count variable, because this is going to be the result, okay? We're counting how many times these substrings appear in the same place in both strings, okay? And one thing that is important for us to do is to check if the length of these strings are the same, or which one is larger or smaller than the other. Why? Because if we do an iteration here, for example, here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This string here has length 7. And this string here has length 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If we do an iteration with 7, these strings won't be available to do this, because we cannot create one more chair for our string. We have to think on the limit case. And what's the limit case? The string that has the length less than the other. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to check which string has length less than the other. So if length A is less than length B, so the iteration, so I'm going to call this size of the iteration, is going to be length B, because B is the limitant, okay? And the else size is equals to length A. And this else here, it's not only for A being less than B, but also A and B being the same. So it doesn't matter if we use A or B here, okay? So let's go to the next step. What we're going to do. So we're going to do a for loop inside the two strings, okay? And we're going to check if they have the same sequence of chairs. So for I in range, size -1. Why we're using size -1? Because if we use size, it's going to be out of range. Remember the stop, it's not included, no, it's a not included number, okay? That's why we're using size -1. And let's check here. And why? Because, for example, if we want to check this last letter here, we're checking 2 letters at a time, right? So we're checking this, and then 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 we're checking this. If we do the for loop in the whole array, we wouldn't have a pair to compare with this last letter here. That's why we use -1, okay? So we're going to initialize a variable here, so sequence A. And what's going to be the sequence A? We're going to do a string slice here. So A, I plus 2, Y, I plus 2. Oops, I used it once. So Y, I plus 2, because we want to grab 2 chairs at a time, okay? And we're going to create seq B equals B, I plus 2. Okay, I used one again. And now we're going to do an if condition to compare if seq A is equals to sequence B. If this is true, we're going to increment the variable count with 1 more value, and in the end of the problem, we're going to return count, okay? I know it seems strange, but you're going to understand why we do the problem. So print, and let's put a breakpoint in here, and let's do the last debug, 50. So we're passing here these 2 strings here, and we can see in the debug 50. So we initialize our count as 0, and now we're going to do the if condition. So we can see here that the length of A is greater than B. That's why it's going to jump to the that's why, oops, I did it wrong, I'm so sorry. So let me crash the problem. I said it right, but I did it wrong. So if length, no, this is right actually. So sorry, forget what I said before. This is right. I was mistaken for 1 second, but this is right. So remember, we're passing here these 2 strings, okay? We're initializing 0, and here we're going to check. So the length of the string A is greater than the length of the string B. So since A is greater than B, we're going to use the size of B, because remember, string B is the limitant, okay? That's why this if condition here is satisfied. Now it goes to the for loop, so we're going to do the first iteration, I equals 0. So in I equals 0, sequence A is going to grab the elements on position 0 up to 1. So it's going to grab the first 2 chars, so we have here XX, and the sequence B is going to grab the same positions, 0 and 1, but in string B. That's why we have XX. And here we have the if condition. So XX is equals to XX. Yes, that's why we're going to count 1. Okay? Now the next iteration, I equals 1. Here in a sequence A, we're going to grab the elements in position 1 and 2 in the string A. Okay, so we have XC. And in sequence B, we're going to grab the elements of position 1 and 2 in the string B. That's why we have XB here, okay? So we're going to check XC is equals to XB. No, that's why this if condition is not satisfied, and we'll go to the next iteration. So I equals 2, sequence A, it's going to grab the elements on the position 2 and 3, so we have CA. And sequence B is going to grab the position 2 and 3 in the string B, and we have BA. So CA is equals to BA? No, so this if condition is not satisfied. So we go to the next iteration, I equals 3. In here, we're going to grab the elements 3 and 4 of the string A. So we can see here AA. And in sequence B, we're going to grab the elements in position 3 and 4 in the string B, and we're going to have AA. So AA is equals to AA. Yes, so since this condition is satisfied, we're going to increment 1 to count, okay? Next iteration, I equals 4. So we have here sequence A. We're going to grab the elements on position 4 and 5. So we're going to grab the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to grab AZ. Okay. And in sequence B, we're going to grab the element in position 4 and 5. And we're going to have here AZ. So AZ is equals to AZ. Yes, so we're going to increment, this condition is satisfied, and we're going to increment count. Okay? Now, what's happening? We are not going to do the next iteration because here we have the range is 5 and we get I equals 4. So if I equals 5 here, this doesn't work because 5 is not included. And why we stop the iteration? Because as we can see here, the string B already did the whole iteration in its string. We have one letter here missing in the string A, but we're not going to do this because this string here will be out of range if we do another for loop. That's why our for loop stops and we're going to return count. Okay? So let's just check the CodingBat just to make sure that we did all everything that they wanted. Okay, let me just make this right, fix the indentation and go. So all correct, and we're done with CodingBat Python Warmup-2. So I hope you enjoyed this content. If you have any doubt, please let me know. Okay, bye bye.